first time in 8 years that happened. It's an important step to be able to resolve the issues that the member mentioned. But the Conservatives need to pick a lane, Mr. Speaker. I heard consistently, including from the member from Simcoe North, that Canada should not be engaging with China. We should not be having discussion. This member now stands up on the Conservative benches and says we should be doing more to engage with China. The Conservatives really need to determine what lane they're going to pick. Our lane is very clear. We believe that we can recalibrate the relationship in a pragmatic and constructive way. We are undertaking that work, and that is the work that we will do for farmers across this country. But speaking of farmers, Mr. Speaker, I would ask that member to go back and look at his platform in April. Not one single word about Canadian farmers that the Conservatives promised in their platform. It is shameful, Mr. Speaker. Shameful.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Jean.
Président, j'ai apprécié le discours de mon collègue de Kingston. Seulement, c'est tellement indécent ce qui se fait de l'autre côté de la Chambre quand vient le temps de parler de forêt. Il s'est vanté dans son discours des mesures sur la forêt. Monsieur le Président, on va donner 100 milliards de dollars en crédit d'impôt à l'industrie pétrolière gazière jusqu'en 2040. La foresterie, on n'a absolument rien. La semaine passée, mercredi le 29, il y avait des gens sur la colline parlementaire de l'industrie, des syndicats, des élus municipaux qui arrivaient avec une proposition novatrice, c'est-à-dire que le gouvernement achète 50% des droits compensatoires qui sont pris de l'autre côté des douanes, Monsieur le Président. Et lorsque le conflit se réglera,
and then when the dispute was settled, they would get the money back, and it would cost the government nothing in the long run. But what does my colleague have to say about that? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that question. And listen,
C'est absolument les différentes mesures pour le secteur forestier dont le budget.
There are measures for the forestry industry, $1.2 billion in the budget, specifically for forestry all across the country, in Nova Scotia and Quebec and in BC. And yes, absolutely, with the negotiations with the U.S., the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. relations is absolutely seized with that file. We understand the importance of our forestry workers all across Canada. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Sackville, Bedford, Preston.
Thank you. Thank my colleague from King's Hants for his great speech. At the end of his speech there, he touched on the investments in this budget in defence, which is a significant net benefit, of course, for the entire country, but particularly for Nova Scotia, where we have for centuries had a disproportionately high rate of veterans in military service. So I just wonder if the member could touch a bit on how he expects that will help his constituents in King's Hants and the entire country as well. Thank you.
Before I recognize the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, there's a lot of noise outside of the chamber, and it'd be great if those people, I know this is the busiest time in the lead up to Standing Order 31 statements in question period, but it's getting noisy again outside the chamber this time. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister has about a minute.
Big crowd, Mr. Speaker. They were excited to hear my speech, not because of question period, but I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question from Nova Scotia. Look, I'm really proud of the investments that the government is making in defence. This is important for our men and women in uniform, but it's also part of a defence industrial policy to be able to create good jobs across this country. When I think about Nova Scotia, I think about IMP Aerospace, which I know the member is well familiar. There will be many constituents in his riding who work at that facility. We have some work that we can do to help support IMP to be able to take advantage of the procurement that exists for our Royal Canadian Air Force over the days ahead. When I think about CFB Greenwood, there's a huge opportunity on military housing that benefits both the community in Kings County, but also, of course, most importantly, our CAF membership. These are the types of projects that I want to work on, that this government wants to work on together, collaboratively with all members in this House, because it's important for our defence, it's important for our economy, but it matters to men and women in uniform. And given the fact that it's Remembrance Day week, let me say thank you very much to every member of the Canadian Armed Forces, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the Honourable Member for Pickering, Brooklyn. Begins, I have to let her know that she will be interrupted in about 2 minutes for Standing Order 31 statements.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to take part in today's debate on Budget 2025 Canada Strong. As we know, advanced economics around the world are facing global economic headwinds, and Canada is no exception. With the historic rise in tariffs affecting our economy, Canadians are feeling the pressure in their day-to-day lives. But, Mr. Speaker, Canadians don't need more talk about challenges. They need a plan for what comes next. And that is exactly what Budget 2025 delivers. This is an investment budget, a confident Canada taking control of its future, a plan that invests in people, in opportunity, and in our communities. Mr. Speaker, the question I hear most often in Pickering, Brooklyn, from young families to new graduates and even long-term residents is simple. Can we afford to build our future here? We know the housing market has begun to soften and prices have started to stabilize in the past few months. And that is encouraging. But for many, owning a home still feels just out of reach. And for renters, affordability and stability remain real concern. Budget 2025 delivers a real plan to build more homes faster and make them affordable again. Through Build Canada Homes, the government is investing $13 billion over 5 years to double the pace of home building over the next decade. This initiative will help build affordable homes across the country while modernizing how we build, using new technology, partnerships, and financing tools to get shovels in the ground sooner.
The honourable member will have 8 minutes and 6 seconds following question period to complete her speech. Statements by members, déclaration de députés. The honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to honour the great work of Habitat for Humanity Canada, and in particular, Habitat for Humanity of Greater Ottawa. By leveraging non-market financing, volunteer labour, donated goods, and tying mortgage payments to income, Habitat gets families into affordable homes. I have participated in a Habitat build and seen the joy on the faces of people helping. But the greatest thing of all was seeing the smiles on the faces of children when they and their families receive keys to their new homes. Safe and affordable home ownership changes lives, and even a child understands that. I want to thank Sarah Cooper, the entire Habitat for Humanity of Greater Ottawa team, volunteers and donors for the transformative difference they are making in people's lives. Go, Habitat, go.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The history of business is filled with scandals and scams of companies cooking the books to hide financial disaster. The Lehman Brothers global financial services firm hid more than $50 billion in loans disguised as sales. Bernie Madoff conducted the largest Ponzi scheme in history, defrauding investors of almost $65 billion. Enron, the energy company, kept the huge debts from the balance sheet, costing shareholders $74 billion. The new Liberal budget reminds me of those scandals. They want to increase the national debt by $321 billion with a $78 billion deficit this year alone. Change the accounting method. Hide the true debt by calling it investment. Canadians are not fooled. They know they are once again being asked to pay the bill for the Liberal mismanagement. This finance minister and his buddies needs to learn that scammers always get found out. Thank you very much.
Honourable member for Sackville, Bedford, Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize Shane McLeod, a teacher in my riding and recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence in STEM. Mr. McLeod's approach to science education is defined by innovation and inclusion. He integrates current events and lived experiences into physics and environmental science, helping students see themselves in the material and understand how science shapes our world. This includes his popular YouTube channel, which features at-home experiments and demonstrations filmed on his front porch. He also uses a mastery-based testing model that lets students rewrite exams after receiving feedback, helping students build confidence and a deeper understanding of difficult concepts. Beyond his own classroom, Mr. McLeod has trained science teachers across Canada through the Perimeter Institute, published peer-reviewed research, and led programs that open STEM pathways for girls and African Nova Scotian students. I would ask all members of the House to join me in congratulating Mr. McLeod on this well-earned recognition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Tuesday's budget presented a $78.2 billion deficit, driving up prices and making life more expensive for families all across Canada. Food inflation is skyrocketing, and it is made worse by this government's massive debts. This year, food bank visits in Canada have hit 2.2 million. You know, 10 years ago in Parry Sound, Muskoka, this is an idyllic rural community of communities where neighbors take care of each other. The food programs back then that were needed were the Salvation Army food drive at the holiday times. Today, there are 16 food-related charities in Parry Sound, Muskoka, from communities like Bracebridge and Huntsville, towns with 3 different food distribution charities, to the many tiny communities like Argyle and Burkes Falls and Honey Harbour with a few hundred people. Food banks are an essential lifeline in every corner of our riding. These small food programs in Parry Sound, Muskoka are struggling to keep up with the need. So while the amazing people at Parry Sound, Muskoka will continue to support each other, they are also begging this government to please stop making life so expensive for them and all their neighbors.
L'honorable député de Marc-Aurèle-Certain.
Monsieur le Président, je me lève aujourd'hui pour parler d'une organisation importante dans mon communauté, Auchan-Fleury, située à Laval. Depuis plus de 35 ans, Auchan-Fleury est un pilier de la vie locale, offrant des programmes et services essentiels qui rassemblent les citoyens et renforcent le tissu social. Que ce soit pour des activités pour les jeunes, le soutien aux familles, les événements culturels et l'engagement communautaire de Auchan-Fleury fait une réelle différence dans la vie des résidents de Laval. L'organisation est guidée par sa mission, famille, plaisir, respect, ambition, des valeurs qui reflètent son engagement à soutenir et enrichir la vie de tous les membres. Je tiens à profiter de cette occasion pour remercier tous ceux et celles qui font partie de Auchan-Fleury pour leur engagement remarquable à améliorer la qualité de vie de tant de familles. Merci beaucoup.
The honourable member for Carleton Trail Eagle Creek.
I am pleased to rise today and pay tribute to Major Lorne Benedict Plemmel. Raised on a family farm in St. Gregor, he joined the military at the age of 17 and served the guns of the Royal Canadian Horse Artillery and the Royal Canadian Artillery for 38 years, climbing the ranks from a gunner to a major, a remarkable feat itself. His service included many peacekeeping missions and tours of duty in Afghanistan with NATO. While he never sought accolades, Major Plemmel's dedication did not go unnoticed. Among his many awards are the Order of Military Merit and the Chief of Defense Staff Commendation. His decision to stand on guard for our country deserves our gratitude. We are grateful to him and his family for the sacrifices they made to keep our nation strong and free. Major Plemmel has been laid to rest but will always be remembered for his love of country, family and friends, a true hero from Saskatchewan, a truly great Canadian. Thank you for your service, Leroy.
The honourable member for Nipissing-Timiskaming.
Monsieur le Président, I stand in support of Budget 2025. In preparation for this budget, I had the pleasure of meeting with many different organizations and certainly people of all ages, including the young people in my riding of Nipissing-Timiskaming. One such group was the Embers, an inspiring group of young girl guides. In relationship to the budget, they shared what matters most to them, helping communities grow, caring for the planet, supporting those in need, and showing kindness to others. I was pleased to see that Budget 2025 delivers on these values as it invests $660 million in women's equality and leadership. It also includes many other strategic investments that ensure a secure future for young people in Canada. Monsieur le Président, I conclude by saying that the Embers remind us that real leadership begins with care and compassion. On their behalf, I thank our government for creating a future where every young girl knows her voice matters, and I encourage all colleagues in this House to support
The honourable member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
The Prime Minister's company, Brookfield, has been exposed as Canada's biggest tax dodger. Brookfield managed to avoid paying a staggering $6.5 billion in Canadian taxes. As chair of Brookfield, the Prime Minister registered 3 multi-billion-dollar investment funds in the Cayman Islands and above a bike shop in Bermuda, all to avoid paying Canadian taxes. On one hand, in his new budget, he's asking hardworking Canadians to fund a $78.3 billion deficit, but in the other hand, he saved his elitist friends from paying $6.5 billion in taxes. It's no wonder that the Prime Minister got all his Liberals to vote against having Brookfield come to Ottawa in answer to Canadians. The Prime Minister's new budget wants to build Canada strong, but I think we can all agree that Canada would be much stronger if Brookfield paid its taxes right here at home.
Des députés de Côte-Nord, Kawawachikamach-Nitassinan.
Monsieur le Président, c'est avec un immense plaisir que j'accueille aujourd'hui sur la colline parlementaire le port de Bécomo et plus particulièrement sa présidente directrice générale, une femme que j'admire, Madame Karine Otis. Je joins donc ma voix à la leur pour parler de notre Côte-Nord, de Bécomo, de notre port qui est une porte ouverte sur le monde entier, lié intimement au port de Rotterdam, le plus important port d'Europe, duquel il n'a rien à envier avec une leader comme Mme Otis. Avec 4 millions de tonnes de marchandises transportées annuellement étant le 4e port d'escale pour les croisières internationales, le port de Bécomo fourmille et prospère et il nous rend plus que fiers. Et cela grâce également à l'ensemble de son équipe et de son conseil d'administration qui agissent comme des catalyseurs d'innovation, de développement économique et de richesse humaine pour la communauté non seulement bécomoise mais aussi nord-côtière. Karine, sachez que vous pourrez toujours compter sur mon appui plein et entier, celui d'une alliée, pour réaliser cet avenir que vous forgez jour après jour, un avenir qui a l'envergure de notre Côte-Nord.
The honourable member for Fredericton, Oromocto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of SOCAN, which is the Society of Composers, Authors and Music Publishers of Canada, I'd like to invite everyone to celebrate the first ever Music Creator Day on Friday, November 7th. La Journée des créateurs de musique réaffirme la mission de la SOCAN, qui est de veiller à ce que les créateurs de musique canadiens soient respectés, reconnus et rémunérés équitablement. SOCAN has been doing this work, this important work, for 100 years. The date, November 7th, was chosen to honor the birthday of one of the greatest songwriters of all time from Canada, Joni Mitchell. So I invite you all to sit down and enjoy your favorite Joni song tomorrow, or a song by any other amazing Canadian, and honor the great musical creators of this country on Music Creator Day. Thank you. Merci.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, every dollar this Prime Minister spends comes directly out of Canadians' pockets. This Liberal government's 10th budget delivers the largest deficit outside of the COVID years at $78 billion. It will add more fuel to the inflation fire, and Canadians will continue to struggle to afford groceries. Poverty and food insecurity have risen nearly 40% in just 2 years, yet the Liberals keep gaslighting Canadians by insisting their hidden taxes on food and fuel are imaginary. Conservatives have put forward real solutions to make life affordable, cutting the industrial carbon tax, the food packaging tax, and the fuel standards tax. But the Liberals instead chose to give tax breaks to elites purchasing private jets and yachts. My neighbors in Oshawa are clear. They do not want a costly election. They wanted an affordable budget. Conservatives want a hopeful future. For young people, we want homes, jobs, and hope. For our seniors, we want affordability. We want to bring back the promise.
The honourable member for Calgary Confederation.
Mr. Speaker, forestry is core to our Canadian identity and the backbone of communities across Canada. This vital sector provides good jobs, drives local economies, and keeps our towns and cities going. Recently, during Forestry Week, the Forest Products Association of Canada held its annual National Forestry Policy Conference here in Ottawa. This conference brought together leaders in forestry from across Canada. It advocated and brought forward ideas for the forestry sector and the over 200,000 jobs it sustains. I want to extend a special thanks to the workers who power this industry and all those who attended, because forestry supports our Canadian way of life, and as Canadians, we need to support the forestry sector. Not just during these trying times of trade disputes, but always. Let's work together across party lines to defend and grow this vibrant sector, because when forestry is strong, Canada is strong.
Yes. Honourable member for Columbia, Kootenay, Southern Rockies.
The Supreme Court's decision in this case is devastating. 2 men were found with hundreds of images and videos of children.
Yeah, it's far too loud in the House for statements. As we know, these statements mean a lot to members and to their communities. So if the member could start from the top, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Supreme Court's decision in this case is devastating. 2 men were found with hundreds of images and videos of children, some as young as 3 years old. One had 317 images, mostly of little girls between 3 and 6. The other had hundreds of videos of children between 5 and 10. These are not victimless crimes. Every image is a real child, hurt, humiliated, and forever changed. These children deserve justice, not excuses. Yet the court chose to focus on theory instead of horrifying facts in front of them. Canadians know justice means protecting the most vulnerable among us. A future Conservative government will use the notwithstanding clause to overturn this ruling. We will restore mandatory minimum sentences for child sexual abuse material and ensure predators face the full weight of the law.
L'honorable député d'Argenteuil, la Petite Nation.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. À l'approche du temps des fêtes, nos communautés se mobilisent pour venir en aide à ceux et celles qui en ont le plus de besoin. Les campagnes de guignolés portées par les bénévoles au grand cœur rappellent l'importance de la solidarité et du partage. Chaque don, qu'il soit petit ou grand, contribue à assurer la sécurité alimentaire des familles défavorisées et à offrir un peu de réconfort à ceux pour qui cette période peut être très difficile. Dans Argenteuil, la Petite Nation, Monsieur le Président, je tiens à saluer le travail remarquable des organismes communautaires, des banques alimentaires, des paroisses, des citoyens engagés qui se dévouent sans compter pour que personne ne soit oublié. En cette saison de générosité et de guignolée, j'invite tous les Canadiens et les Canadiennes à donner avec cœur pour que chaque famille puisse célébrer Noël dans la dignité et l'espérance.
The Honourable Member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, this budget is a booby-trapped blueprint that burdens the next generation with back-breaking bills and broken balances. While the Prime Minister boasts and brags, young Canadians are being buried beneath a $78 billion deficit bombshell. That's not just a blunder, it's a brazen breach of trust. He blurted he'd bring down spending, but instead his first budget ballooned by $90 billion, bankrupting blue-collar breadwinners and blaming everyone but himself. Now interest payments on the national debt have ballooned beyond what we budget for health care transfers. And every household is being billed an extra $5,400 in bloated inflationary spending. A brutal blow to families already barely getting by. Basic needs are being bumped for banker buddies and bloated bureaucracy. And what's the bottom line for our youth? Bleak futures and broken dreams. Behind the buzzwords and back-patting, this budget is a bad bargain for Canadians. It's time to bring back balance, build responsibly, and break free from this cycle of borrowing, bluffing, and betrayal.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this budget is all about building Canada strong. It cares about people. That's why we see the dental program. That's why we see childcare. That's why we have a national school program that's going to be there for over 400,000 children. It is about building a community, Mr. Speaker. It's investing in Canada. Mr. Speaker, think of our hospitals. Think of our streets. Think of our bridges. Think about our communities. That's what this budget's all about. Investing in Canadians. The Conservatives, they don't believe in Canada, Mr. Speaker. But this Prime Minister, this government, we believe in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
6 months ago, the Prime Minister promised Canadians that he'd get the deficit under control, that he'd lower our debt and lower inflation. Instead, he's blown an $80 billion hole in the budget. The debt is climbing, inflation is climbing, and he's added $90 billion in new spending. That's over $5,000 for every family. Every dollar that the Prime Minister spends costs Canadians in higher taxes, higher inflation, and more expensive debt. With this budget, Canadians are paying champagne prices for tap water results. So why is he asking them to pay more?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll refer to the previous comments of the Honourable Member from Winnipeg North. This budget is about building this great country. And what this budget shows is that with the $1 trillion of investment investment that we are going to catalyze. We are going to put more than $3,000 in the pocket of every Canadian by the end of this decade.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Speaker, they're not investing in the next generation. They're borrowing from it. This Prime Minister is on track to be the most expensive in Canada's history. The only ones cashing in on it are bankers. Interest payments on the national debt will cost Canadians $55 billion this year. That's more than this government spends on health care and more than it collects in GST. Every dollar that Canadians pay in GST doesn't go to doctors or nurses or hospitals. It goes to bankers. So why is the Prime Minister so determined to make sure that bankers get better care than patients?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this budget preserves the health transfer to the provinces, over $29 billion. This budget puts $5 billion into health infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, this budget has the lowest net debt to GDP in the G7. It has the lowest deficit projected, and the cost of interest borrowing is lower than when the Conservatives were in government.
Le coût de ce budget libéral va faire grimper le prix de la nourriture, du logement, de tout ce dont les Canadiens ont besoin. Le Premier ministre affirme que le Canada est dans une situation budgétaire solide. Alors pourquoi les familles peinent à joindre les deux bouts? Pourquoi devenir propriétaire est pratiquement impossible pour les jeunes? Pourquoi 2,2 millions de Canadiens font la file à chaque mois dans les banques alimentaires? C'est pas solide, c'est précaire. Le chef libéral a choisi d'enrichir ses amis avec un déficit de 80 milliards de dollars. Pourquoi le Premier ministre brise sa promesse de dépenser moins
to spend less by adding fuel to the fire of inflation.
Très honorable Premier ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, 75% of the new measures in this budget this year are for protecting Canada's sovereignty and for affordability for all Canadians. First point. Second point, this is a budget that invests in Canada. It's a budget that shows confidence in Canada, a budget that's going to put more than $3,000 in the pockets of Canadians. The honourable member from Mégantic-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that is going to go down in history. This Prime Minister is going to go down in history as the most costly government leader in the history of Canada. I'd like to remind him of something important. Every dollar that he spends comes directly out of the pocket of a Canadian who's worked hard to earn it. He promised to spend less, and yet his deficit's going to be almost $80 billion. And in the Journal de Montréal, we read this morning that the federal government is disconnected from real life. What parallel universe is he living in, the Prime Minister? He doesn't understand that he's fueling inflation with his spending, and it's making life harder for every Canadian. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's not the most costly budget, it's the most ambitious budget. The most ambitious budget for Canada. It's ambitious when it comes to building housing for Quebecers and Canadians. Housing across the country. For clean energy, for the future of Canada. This is a budget for the future.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
This Prime Minister's $80 billion deficit will cost each Canadian household $5,400 while avoiding the tax pain he imposes on Canadians. Coming from the guy that set up a $30 billion offshore tax havens for Brookfield when he was chair. He continues to dodge questions on how much money he personally has stashed away offshore while avoiding the taxes he imposes on Canadians. Will he stand up today and tell Canadians how much money he has in offshore tax havens? Just the number.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this budget tightens tax fairness. Mr. Speaker, this budget cuts taxes for 22 million. This budget cuts taxes on new homes for young Canadians starting out. This budget cuts the carbon tax. This budget grows this great country. Come with us and support it.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
He's avoiding the question like he helped Brookfield avoid taxes. When he imposes higher taxes on Canadians, they have a right to know if this Prime Minister still has money in offshore tax havens. I'll give him one more chance. Will he stand up on his own 2 feet and tell Canadians exactly how much money he has stashed away in offshore tax havens? Just the number.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of my record in the private sector, but I'm deeply honored to serve Canadians. And we're serving Canadians by building this great country, by investing in homes, by investing in energy, by investing in ports, by investing in our future. We are going to grow this country like not seen before. There is a chance for everyone in this House to stand up and support it.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
Monsieur le Président, pour un Québécois de plus en plus se lever debout, ça veut dire vouloir l'indépendance du
standing up
Québec.
means standing up for the independence of Quebec.
On a donné une chance à ce
We
gouvernement
gave
qui
this
est en
government a
campagne de
chance.
recrutement. On lui a
You
dit,
know, they're
pouvez-vous
in a
éliminer la
recruitment campaign, and we said, could you
dans la
eliminate
pension de sécurité de la
discrimination
vieillesse
when it comes to
payée
old
aux
age
gens qui ont
security
65
that's
à
paid to people who are
75
aged 65 to
qui est 10%
74?
plus faible
They
que
get
celle qui est
10%
payée aux
less
gens qui ont
than
75 ans
those
et
who
plus.
are
Ils n'avaient qu'à
75 and
dire
over.
oui, c'est
All
un
they had to do
principe de
was say, yes,
justice
that's a
élémentaire.
principle of
Est-ce qu'il
justice that we can
reconnaît
follow?
qu'il a
Does he
simplement
recognize
refusé
that he simply
d'aider les
refused
retraités?
to help retirees?
Très honorable
The
Premier
Right Honourable
Ministre.
Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président, dans ce
Mr.
budget-ci,
Speaker, in
il
this
y a plus
budget,
de 80
there
milliards de
is
dollars
more than
de
$80
transferts
billion
pour les
in
aînés à
transfers
travers
for
le
seniors
Canada.
across Canada.
80 milliards de
$80
dollars.
billion.
Oui, il y a une sous-prime pour les plus aînés.
Yes,
Et ça, c'est la justice.
older seniors do get more, and that is justice.
L'honorable député de
The honourable member
Belleuil-Chambly.
for Belleuil-Chambly.
Il n'a pas lu ses notes, il n'a pas lu son
Well, he
budget.
didn't read his
Deuxième
notes,
chance.
he didn't read his budget.
On
A
a
second
proposé
chance.
au gouvernement, parce que
We
c'est beau de
suggested to the
construire
government,
des
you know,
maisons,
it's one thing to
encore
build
faut-il que les
homes,
jeunes ménages puissent
but young
les
people
acheter.
have to be able
On a
to
dit au
afford to
gouvernement
buy
qu'il va y
them.
avoir un
And we
système
said to the
d'accès
government
privilégié
there should
à
be
du
a
crédit
privileged
pour les
access
jeunes
system
familles
to
qui
credit
achètent
for
une
young
première
families who are
maison
buying a
pour qu'il y ait
first
quelqu'un
home
qui les
so
achète
that
ces
somebody
premières
can buy
maisons-là.
those first
Le
homes.
gouvernement a
The
refusé.
government
Est-ce que le Premier
refused
ministre
that.
confirme qu'il
Will
a
the Prime Minister
refusé
confirm that
d'aider
he
les jeunes
refused to
ménages
help
à acheter une
young
première
people
maison
buy a
avec l'accès
first
au crédit?
home with access to credit?
Le très honorable
The Right
Premier
Honourable
Ministre.
Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
oui,
Speaker.
il y a un avantage pour les jeunes
Yes,
qui
there
achètent
is an
leur première
advantage
maison.
for young people who are
Ça,
buying
c'est
their first
encore la
home.
justice à cause de la
And that
situation
is
avant les grands investissements dans le
justice.
logement. Et
And that's
en
on
même
top
temps,
of
il y a
the
le
big
CELIAP
investments
pour
that we're
les
making
jeunes.
in housing.
Honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
La priorité des
The
Québécois et des
priority
Canadiens,
of
c'est
Quebecers and
également la
Canadians
santé.
is
Nous
also
avons offert au gouvernement
healthcare.
de travailler
We
ensemble
offered
pour augmenter
to
les
work with the
transferts en
government
santé
to
pour qu'ils
increase
suivent
healthcare
l'augmentation des
transfers so that they
dépenses
could
de
follow the
système, du
increases
système
in
de santé
spending
au
across the
Québec,
healthcare
comme
system
ailleurs
in
au
Quebec
Canada.
and elsewhere in
Le
Canada.
gouvernement a dit non.
The government
Les
said
contribuables du
no.
Québec et du Canada
Quebec and
vont
Canadian
payer de
taxpayers
plus
are
en
going to
plus
be
cher
paying more and
d'impôts
more
ou avoir de moins en moins
in
d'argent pour faire
taxes,
autre
or they're
chose
going to
dans
have
les
less
gouvernements
money
du
to
Québec et
do
du Canada.
other things.
Est-ce que le gouvernement confirme qu'il
Will the
refuse
government
d'augmenter les
confirm that it
transferts en
refuses
santé
to
pour qu'ils
increase the
suivent
health
les dépenses de
transfers so that they
système?
can
Ça serait se tenir debout.
follow the increased costs on the systems?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker,
j'ai de bonnes nouvelles.
I have good
Des
news.
bonnes nouvelles pour le Québec.
Good news for Quebec.
12 milliards de dollars
$12
de
billion
transferts pour la santé.
in transfers for
Et il y a
healthcare.
5 milliards de dollars
And
pour
$5 billion for infrastructure,
de la santé.
for healthcare infrastructure in this budget. And there's $4 billion for Hydro-Quebec. There's the port in Contrecoeur. There's the second dock in Saguenay. And $500 million for culture, particularly for cultural institutions in Quebec.
The honourable member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to understand that the more he spends, the more things cost for regular Canadians. Liberals had a chance to lower food costs by scrapping the industrial carbon tax, but they chose to increase food costs by increasing the industrial carbon tax. That drives up costs like fertilizer and farm equipment. So why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive for Canadians? Yeah, way to go, Leanne!
Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, if Conservatives vote against Budget 2025, they vote against old age security. They vote against guaranteed income supplements. They vote against the New Horizons for Seniors program.
Wow.
They vote against anti-fraud measures that will protect seniors from financial crime. They vote against a tax credit for personal support workers who care for seniors. And they vote against dental care that over 2 million seniors rely on. Canadians want to know, who are these Conservatives fighting for? Because it certainly isn't seniors.
The honourable member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, let me spell this out for the Liberals. No farms, no food. The food professor warns that we're the only country in the G7 that's seen 4 consecutive months of rising food inflation. The industrial carbon tax is driving up wholesale food prices, full stop. The Liberals have introduced another of the most costly and largest deficit budgets in Canadian history. So when Canadians are already struggling to put food on the table, why is the Prime Minister so intent on increasing the industrial carbon tax to make food more expensive?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me quote Sylvain Charlebois. Ottawa has quietly set the stage for some indirect relief, not through grocery subsidies and consumers facing policies, but through infrastructure, trade, administrative reforms that could make the food system work a little more efficiency. Mr. Speaker, our farmers have been asking for some of this stuff for a long time. Stand up and give it to them.
Yeah. Through the chair, please. The honourable member for Ponoka, Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history, and every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more they spend, the more things cost. Unfortunately, this Liberal Prime Minister didn't learn anything from the mistakes of the last Liberal Prime Minister. They had a chance in their budget to lower food costs for Canadians by scrapping the industrial carbon tax. Yet they chose to make food more expensive by increasing the industrial carbon tax, driving up the cost of fertilizer and farm equipment. So why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 delivers a stronger Alberta economy by backing workers and industries and innovators. It supports jobs and Alberta's economic edge. Alberta Chamber of Commerce CEO Doug Griffiths said it's a clear commitment to driving economic growth and job creation. Conservatives can't stand up for Alberta if they won't listen to our business community.
Member for Ponoka, Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal industrial carbon tax drives up the price of food. Since this Prime Minister took office, strawberries are up 25%, beef is up 25%, coffee is up 20%. The food professor Sylvain Charlebois told us that the widening gap between Canadian and American food prices was driven by one single factor, the carbon tax. He predicts bad news for 2026 and states that we're the only country in the G7 which has seen 4 consecutive months of a food inflation rate increase. Why is the Prime Minister insisting on making food more expensive for Canadians by raising
the Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, I am so proud to stand today and support a budget that is growing this country, but is also paying attention to rural communities. And I can tell you, in Newfoundland and Labrador, investment in roads, bridges, hospitals, houses, communities, it matters. And I'm asking my Conservative Newfoundland and Labrador colleagues, are they going to vote for the things that matter to our province?
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar this Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians, and the more they spend, the more things cost. The Liberals just had a chance to lower food prices by scrapping the industrial carbon tax. But instead they chose to make food more expensive by hiking the industrial carbon tax that makes food, fuel, and farm equipment more expensive. These costs are passed directly on to Canadians at the grocery store. Why is the Prime Minister not scrapping the carbon tax and making food less expensive?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives are focused on imaginary taxes, we're building Canada strong, Mr. Speaker. And Budget 2025 invests $51 billion into the Build Community Strong Fund, Mr. Speaker. That's good news for families in southwestern Ontario, like my colleague from that area. This includes money for the Newton Athletic Park in Surrey. It includes the Royal Athletic Park in Victoria. It includes the Hamilton Downtown YMCA. It includes the Hamilton Sportif de Montreal. Mr. Speaker, we're going to build Canada strong, and that includes sports facilities for our communities. I hope that member of Parliament will vote for our budget.
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, the following is not imaginary. The food professor, go ahead, Mock, said, and I quote, "The gap between wholesale prices in Canada versus the U.S. wholesale prices has widened, and one factor driving that is the industrial carbon tax. Canada is the only G7 country that's had 4 consecutive months of food inflation increases. Farmers, manufacturers, builders across the country are paying more for fertilizers, steel, and concrete, costs that end up on Canadians' plates. While other G7 countries are lowering costs, this Prime Minister is ignoring the experts, increasing the carbon tax, and making food more expensive. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Very often quoted Sylvain Charlebois had exactly this to say about Budget 2025. Instead, he said our investments in logistics and corridors and trade will bring prices down for food. He said... And the professor goes on, Mr. Speaker, to say that making the National School Food Program will make a difference where it counts. Making that program permanent, Mr. Speaker, is exactly what the food professor has called for.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, we now know that this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more the Liberals spend, the more life costs. Every economist knows this. The Prime Minister could have scrapped the inflationary industrial carbon tax. Instead, he chose to increase the tax and increase costs for all Canadians. My question to the Prime Minister is simple. Why is he increasing the industrial carbon tax and making our food more expensive?
Why? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here's what our government is doing. Last week, we worked with 9 different countries to announce 25 different transactions to bring $6.4 billion to 6 new mining and processing facilities all across this country. Voting for this budget will bring a lot more of that, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Mirabel.
Mr. Speaker, the budget, it's the worst of both worlds. It's a liberal deficit with conservative ideas. Nothing for healthcare, nothing for seniors, environmental cuts. It's Stephen Harper all over again. And it's not me who said it, it's the government House Leader yesterday who said it, and I quote, "This is a budget that conservative voters could love." The Liberals aren't even hiding it, except that Quebecers, they didn't vote Conservative. They didn't vote for cuts to healthcare. They didn't vote for our seniors to be abandoned. They didn't vote to end the fight against climate change. Why are the Liberals not meeting the demands of Quebecers?
The Honourable Minister
of Canadian Identity and Culture. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers voted for 44 Liberal members on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you might remember who was president of La Disque in 2003. He was, it was the leader of the Bloc Québécois, and he was in favor of investments in Canadian culture at the time. And now the member is going to tell his members to vote against cultural investments for TV and music in Quebec for our artists. He's saying, no, we don't want those investments in Quebec. The honourable member for Repentigny.
On a de la place.
On a de la place.
Mr. Speaker, this is the budget of climate capitulation. Cuts of 15% to the Department of the Environment, ending the cap on emissions in the oil and gas sector, tax credits for the oil and gas sector, and more. This morning, the Environment Commissioner was clear. He said that Canada would not be able to meet its greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets for 2030, and we're going even further back by ending carbon pricing. There's more money for the oil sector, less about money for the environment. We're heading straight into the wall. Why are the Liberals keeping their foot on the gas? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I say it every day, our government will continue to fight climate change, and if you look at the budget, you'll see the investments. There will continue to be industrial carbon pricing. We are going to reduce methane emissions, but not only that, if you look throughout the budget, you'll see that we are fighting climate change in every department of the government. We're going to do the work. We will build a strong Canada.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
The Toronto home building industry has released a scathing report on this government's budget, warning of 100,000 job losses in the sector, despite the Prime Minister promising 500,000 homes a year during the election. The government continues to refuse to implement our policy of cutting the GST on all new homes under $1.3 million. Now, housing starts have plummeted, and developers are laying off their trained staff because the cost of government is just too high. Why won't the government listen to the experts and cut the GST on all new homes under $1.3 million so builders can get back to work and building the homes that Canadians so desperately need?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, here's the reality check. The Conservative Party of Canada is voting against the largest investment in infrastructure in Canadian history, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of jobs, apprenticeship opportunities, opportunities for our youth, opportunities to train the next generation, Mr. Speaker. Roads, bridges, community centers, hospitals, you name it, major projects in the national interest, homes, Mr. Speaker. None of this happens if the Conservatives vote against the budget. I hope they'll reconsider.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if spending money could solve the housing crisis, we'd have a surplus right now. This from a government who named a housing minister who made housing taxes 141% more expensive in Vancouver and also increased the prices of homes by 149%. We're in a housing crisis now, and it's clear this guy doesn't get it. The experts are warning of 100,000 job losses in the sector. So if the government won't listen to us and what we're saying about cutting the GST on homes under $1.3 million, why won't they listen to the experts?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the real question is, will the Conservatives support the most aggressive housing budget in Canadian history? Will you? Your new government is proposing the biggest investment in our history in affordable housing, putting Canadians to work, building the affordable housing that we need. We're seeing unprecedented levels of housing starts. We're seeing progress in housing right now, and we're doubling up on that. We're going to build. We expect your support on the budget to do more.
Again, to members, through the chair, I don't have an opinion on this. The Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
On Tuesday, Canadians saw the truth about this Liberal government's disastrous housing plan. They promised to build 500,000 homes a year, but turned into a plan to kill 100,000 jobs. Toronto's Build Association says the budget is particularly troubling. Not an actionable plan to reduce housing fees with any urgency. They promised to cut development charges by 50%, but surprise, another broken Liberal promise. Housing sales have collapsed, down 82% in the GTA. Will the Prime Minister finally admit he is not building homes, he's only building a long list of broken promises?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that will invest in Canada, invest in young Canadians, invest in Canadian families from coast to coast to coast. We are supporting youth by giving opportunities to help them build skilled trades and access high-paying careers and jobs across the projects, building homes, building out major national projects. We are investing in training and supports for 20,000 youth who are facing employment barriers, 24,000 additional Canada Summer Jobs opportunities, co-ops, internships, and apprenticeships across the country. We hope the members opposite will support young people and their opportunities for jobs.
Good job, good job.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
We've heard this before. The recycled ideas in Canada's housing industry continues to fall. Housing sales are down 82% in the GTA. Toronto's Build Association warns that this budget is built on backward-looking data that provides false assurances. In simple terms, builders can build, sellers can sell, and buyers cannot buy. And not only that, this budget will cost 100,000 jobs and commit us to a future with fewer homes and fewer opportunities. Will the Prime Minister come to his senses and finally address the cost of development charges so we can unleash our housing construction?
Yes, the Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality, Tourism and Small Business.
Mr. Speaker, when Conservatives talk about affordability, what they really mean are cuts. Cuts to the programs that Canadians vitally rely on. Parents and families know that they can trust our government has their backs. We've strengthened the Canada Child Benefit, providing families nearly $8,000 for children under 6 and $6,570 for children aged 6 to 17. Through the budget, we are making permanent the National School Food Program, which will give parents peace of mind so that they can send their kids to school with a full meal. Mr. Speaker, well, what she was really referring to is the only thing recycled on that side of the House are their slogans, Mr.
The honourable member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends costs out of Canadians' pocket. The more he spends, the more everything costs. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio, he raised it. He promised to spend less, but he has blown $90 billion, costing every family $5,400. Now Liberal spends more on interest payments than health care, spending $55.6 billion to service debt while Canadians struggle to pay for grocery and housing. When will the Prime Minister stop mortgaging Canadians' future and deliver an affordable budget for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, that member has risen in this House many times to address public safety concerns, and I know that his constituents in Brampton have those concerns because they're my constituents too, Mr. Speaker. In this budget, there are historic investments, $1.7 billion to the RCMP. Wow. We're deploying 1,000 new officers and 1,000 new CBSA agents, Mr. Speaker. But the Conservatives have said they're not going to support it. But it doesn't surprise me since their leader thinks the RCMP is despicable.
L'honorable député de Drôme-Missisquoi.
Comme ancien maire, je suis préoccupé par les problèmes liés au vieillissement des infrastructures et à la pénurie de logements. Et ça ne touche pas seulement les circonscriptions urbaines, mais aussi les circonscriptions rurales comme la mienne de Drôme-Missisquoi. Le gouvernement s'est engagé à investir dans le logement et les infrastructures dans le cadre du budget Canada fort, un investissement qui ne se fait qu'une fois par génération. Le ministre des Finances peut-il informer la Chambre des mesures prises pour construire plus audacieusement, plus rapidement que jamais dans les circonscriptions comme la mienne?
In ridings like mine. L'honorable ministre des Finances.
Monsieur le Président, on a plein de bonnes nouvelles pour les Canadiens et
Canadiennes.
For Canadians.
But we only have 30 seconds to explain to Canadians.
Oui, avec Maison Canada, on va bâtir plus de logements abordables. Oui, avec le fonds pour les collectivités, on va pouvoir investir dans l'aqueduc, dans les infrastructures municipales. Et oui, Monsieur le Président, on a mis un fonds pour les infrastructures de santé, comme le Québec nous avait demandé, Monsieur le Président. Tous les députés de cette Chambre devraient se lever en faveur d'un budget générationnel, aider les prochaines générations, bâtir un Canada fort. Nous croyons dans le Canada, Monsieur le Président.
In Canada, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister introduced his first budget, much more costly than Canadians anticipated. A $78 billion deficit is a high hurdle to get over, but the fiscal year is not final yet, and this government has never set a spending target they haven't blown past. Don't worry, there's more debt ahead, and the next 5 years of forecast deficits have doubled under this Prime Minister. And I'll correct the Prime Minister, because 10 years ago under the last Conservative administration, debt servicing was $28 billion and going down. It's $55 billion going up now. So why is the Prime Minister choosing to ignore the inflation he's causing and driving up costs for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, this is a generational budget that will increase Canada's economic competitiveness and prosperity. That's good news for our small, medium and large businesses. The President and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Candice Lang, says the government has heard businesses call to focus on the economy and has made some tough choices to attract investment. Mr. Speaker, this is about building the strongest economy in the G7. I hope we can count on our colleagues' support.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Well, that wasn't the answer to the question. I think it was a lot of fantasy at the end of the day. But this government, once again, has revised its so-called fiscal anchors. That's another target they keep missing. No problem, just change the definition. This year's anchors are so weak, they're practically meaningless. When you change definition to fit your narrative, you undermine trust and accountability. Canadians deserve stability, not a government that moves the goalposts whenever it suits them. Mr. Speaker, Canada's fiscal position is adrift. Will the minister admit this budget has no fiscal responsibility and his so-called anchors are a political spin? Thank you.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, this government recently announced a 3-year extension of Operation Reassurance, Canada's largest overseas military mission with over 2,000 CAF members stationed in Latvia. Is this member seriously suggesting that Canada should not pass a budget which allows us to give the strongest expression of our commitment to NATO, as Canadians reinforce NATO's eastern flank by contributing to collective defence and cooperative security in the region? Mr. Speaker, Canada is leading a 14-nation multinational brigade there. I would suggest the members opposite join us, support our Canadian Armed Forces.
The Honourable Member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more he spends, the more things cost. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he'd keep the deficit less than $62 billion. Instead, it's $78 billion. He told Canadians he'd get rid of the consumer carbon tax, but instead, the industrial carbon tax is set to rise and make food even more expensive by driving up the cost of fuel, fertilizer and farm equipment. Why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax, and why does he want to make food more expensive?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, a working-class Canadian voting Conservative would be like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. My goodness, Mr. Speaker, when I took to people who live in rural Nova Scotia, they want simple things. They want good jobs, better health care, lower taxes, and this budget delivers all three. You don't have to take my word for it. Listen to a statement from the provincial progressive Conservative government in Nova Scotia, who congratulated the Prime Minister on his budget based on more money for health care infrastructure, for housing and development, and for tax incentives that are going to create good jobs for the people who live in my communities. Conservatives from different parts of the country know this is a good idea. The only Conservatives who seem to disagree are the ones who sit on the other side of this house.
L'honorable député de
Monsieur le Président, les libéraux ont présenté le budget le plus coûteux, le plus déficitaire de l'histoire du pays en dehors de la pandémie. Le coût de leur budget fera grimper le prix de la nourriture, du logement et de tout ce que les Canadiens ont besoin. Et ce sont nos familles qui paient le prix en l'épicerie de la taxe carbone industrielle de ce gouvernement que le gouvernement a augmenté. Il y a quelques semaines, j'ai demandé une réponse au gouvernement pour une électrice de mon comté à la Pocatière. Était obligé de choisir entre se nourrir ou se loger. Nous n'avons pas eu aucune réponse. Pourquoi le Premier ministre augmente la taxe carbone industrielle qui rend la nourriture plus chère pour mon électrice et aussi pour l'ensemble des Canadiens?
L'honorable secrétaire d'État.
Monsieur le Président, je suis un peu surprise de la réaction de mon collègue d'en face.
Dans ce budget-là, il y a des jobs à la Davie. Il y a des jobs à l'Apocatière à partir des mesures qu'on a. Dans ce budget-là, moi, j'ai Châteauguay-les-Jardins de la Pierreville. J'ai une des grosses frontières au Québec. Et j'ai plusieurs de mes collègues ici, partout en Chambre. 1,7 milliard pour renforcer la sécurité à nos frontières. C'est ça que ça nous apporte, ce budget-là. Si mes concitoyens en ont besoin, je suis certaine que les concitoyens derrière aussi. Merci.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals had a chance to ease the burden on Canadians, but since this Prime Minister took office, prices have skyrocketed. Strawberries up 25%, beef 25%, and coffee 20%. It's unbelievable. The industrial carbon tax is adding to the price gap with the U.S. and is likely to keep food inflation high. This is according to Professor Sylvain Charlebois. He said it'll stay that way for years to come. Mr. Speaker, once again, why is this government hiking this tax and making food even more expensive for our families? Honorable Minister of Health.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker,
vous savez, bâtir un Canada fort, c'est faire des investissements générationnels en
with
infrastructure.
generational investments
Le
in
budget de
infrastructure.
2025
Budget
comprend 5 milliards de
2025
dollars pour un fonds dédié aux
$5 billion
infrastructures de santé
for an
afin
infrastructure and
de
health fund,
contribuer à la construction
which
de
will
nouveaux
contribute
hôpitaux,
to
salles
building
d'urgence,
new hospitals,
centres de soins,
ERs,
facultés de médecine et
care
autres.
centers, and
C'est ce que
medicine
les
faculties.
provinces, y compris le Québec et
To
les
name a
territoires
few,
nous ont demandé, et c'est
this
ce
is
que
what
nous
the
livrons.
provinces and
Merci.
territories asked us to do, and that's what we've done. Thank you.
Député de
The honourable member
Richmond-Arthabasca.
for Richmond-Arthabasca.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you,
Président.
Mr.
Monsieur le Président,
Speaker.
soyons clairs.
Let's be
Les
clear,
conservateurs
Mr.
sont pour
Speaker.
les baisses de taxes,
Conservatives
pour
are
les baisses
for
d'impôts,
tax
pour laisser
cuts
plus d'argent
to
dans les
leave
poches des
more money
Canadiens et
in
des
the pockets
Canadiennes.
of Canadians.
Savez-vous où
Do you
les libéraux
know
ont choisi
where
de couper
the
les
Liberals
taxes?
have chosen to cut
Restez assis
taxes?
sur votre chaise, Monsieur le Président. Ils ont
Try to
décidé
stay
de
in your
couper
seat here.
sur les avions privés et les
Private
bateaux de luxe.
aircraft
C'est
and
pas une blague, Monsieur le
luxury
Président.
yachts.
Pour les amis
This is
libéraux.
no joke. It's for liberal
J'invite les
cronies.
députés à venir à l'épicerie avec
That's
moi,
where they're
parler
cutting
à la mère
taxes.
monoparentale, aux
I would
personnes
invite
âgées,
people to
pour leur
speak
dire
to
que c'est les
single
propriétaires
parents,
de
to
bateaux
go
de
to
luxe
grocery
qui vont avoir
stores,
une baisse de
and
taxes
speak to
et non eux
seniors,
à l'épicerie.
whether they see whether they want tax cuts or lower food prices.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'invite mon collègue
Thank you, Mr.
de l'autre côté
Speaker.
de la
I
maison de
invite
venir
my
parler à tous les
colleague
membres
on the
dans
other
sa
side of the
circonscription.
House to
Parce
talk
que
to
dans
all
ce
of his
budget, on a
constituents, because
décidé
in
de
this budget,
protéger
we
la
decided to
position des
protect
Premières Nations.
the position
Aussi,
of
c'est
First
important
Nations.
qu'on a
It's
inclus des
important also that we included
infrastructures,
infrastructure investments for water and housing. It's also important to invite the opposition to work with us to protect First Nations. And I know that there are some in his riding. Thank you.
Richmond-Arthabasca.
Member for Richmond-Arthabasca.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
en
Speaker,
tout respect pour la
with all due
collègue,
respect,
Pierre-Olivier Zappa, référence en économie et en finance, le fédéral déconnecté de la vraie
federal
vie.
government
Elle
is
parle des Premières
disconnected from
Nations,
reality.
je parle
She
des
talks
bateaux
about
de luxe,
First Nations,
des avions.
but I was talking
Je peux
about
pas voir sa
luxury
réponse.
air,
Qui a décidé de baisser
luxury
les
jets
taxes, les
and
avions
yachts.
privés,
So
ces
the
bateaux de luxe,
answer had
pendant
nothing to
que
do with
notre
my
monde
question.
souffre en arrache,
There are
rien
people
pour nos
suffering and
aînés,
struggling,
rien pour notre
nothing for our
monde. Qui a
seniors.
décidé ça?
Who decided to cut taxes on luxury water, yachts
Je
and
trouve ça
jets?
fascinant quand j'ai un
Honorable
collègue
member.
du Québec qui se
Well,
lève
it's
et qui
tiring
dit
when a
que le
member from
secteur de
Quebec
l'aérospatial au Québec, c'est
stands
pas
up
important.
and
Vous savez quoi?
suggests
La
that
décision du
aerospace is
gouvernement
not
fait en sorte
important in
que
Quebec.
Bombardier, hier,
That
a
industry
annoncé
is
600
very
nouveaux emplois
important.
au Québec.
Bombardier announced 600 new jobs in Quebec yesterday. My colleague,
François Legault à l'Assemblée nationale
as a former colleague of François Legault in Quebec City, should be calling François Legault and telling him what he thinks about this news.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, in a democracy, everything can be debated, but some moral lines should never be blurred. Protecting vulnerable children must remain one of them. The Supreme Court recently struck down a one-year mandatory prison sentence for two men who possess hundreds of sexual images of children, some as young as 3 years old. These are real victims of abuse and trauma. Why is this government more focused on protecting the charter rights of pedophiles rather than defending the dignity of children?
Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, plain and simple, Child abusers should face the toughest penalties under Canadian law. Mr. Speaker, we are bringing forward legislation that is going to protect children. I hope the Conservatives can support it because their past record is that they haven't supported the online harms legislation. They haven't supported lawful access tools for law enforcement so we can catch child predators. They put politics before the safety of our children, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
The sexual exploitation of children is one of the clearest and most horrific crimes imaginable. Recently, the Supreme Court struck down the one-year mandatory sentence for possessing child sexual abuse material. Yet this government refuses to use Section 33 of the Charter, the notwithstanding clause, to restore the minimal penalties for pedophiles. Why is this government choosing to protect the charter rights of predators over the safety and the innocence of our children?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, like I've said before, child predators are the worst criminals in our country, and they should face the toughest sentences. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly why we're bringing forward new legislation so that we can toughen sentences and make sure child predators stay behind bars, Mr. Speaker. But I would like the Conservatives to promise that they will support that piece of legislation and they will support C-19 that is currently before this House, because they have not supported us in the past when it comes to helping children and to protecting children. So please put your politics aside and support the children of this country.
Through the chair, please. The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is a generational investment in our economy, in our industries, and in Canadians. Canadians are paying lower prices for cellular services, a 40% decline in prices over 5 years. But these bills still eat into the pockets of Canadians. Budget 2025 has proposed measures to lower costs for Canadians and to improve competition. At a time when Canadians are concerned with rising costs and keeping their monthly bills affordable, can the Minister of Industry tell us how the government is working to lower cell phone bills?
Honorable Ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague from Cumberland Colchester for her important question. She and I are laser focused, and this government laser focused on making sure that we bring down costs in the telecom sector, because we took the right decision this summer to uphold the decision of the CRTC to increase competition in the telecommunication sector. We said also that we would be hawkish on competition, so we will do more in this budget to increase competition and make sure that we reform our telecommunication sector. Thank you so much.
The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else Canadians buy. The young families, seniors, and veterans in Edmonton Northwest are having to make hard choices as the snow falls. It's costing more to heat their homes and feed their families. But every day in this House, the Liberals say families are just imagining higher living expenses by their taxes and increased spending. So why is the Prime Minister breaking his promise to spend less and pouring more inflationary fuel on the fire?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Defence Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Budget 2025 will enable Canada to step up to meet the moment, to include $82 billion for defence and security. And here's a fun fact, Mr. Speaker. Stephen Harper's 2009 budget, adjusted for inflation, is actually the biggest deficit budget in Canadian history, with little to show for it. We'll take no lessons from the Conservatives.
The honourable member for Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Adjusted for the inflation that they caused. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' new budget is generationally expensive. It is historically expensive. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends will come out of Canadians' pockets. The more they spend, the more things will cost. Either through taxes or inflation in the future, the cost will come. $80 billion is $2,000 for each man, woman, and child in our country. That's $2,000 for my 3-year-old daughter and $2,000 for my 1-year-old son. Why should they have to pay this generational debt the Prime Minister is saddling us with? Why is the Prime Minister breaking his promise to spend less?
Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
This budget invests in lowering the cost of living and creating jobs, including $2 billion for the Critical Minerals Sovereign Fund. Critical minerals are in our phones, computers, solar panels, medical equipment, and more. Canada is rich in minerals, with projects in ridings held by Conservatives, Bloc Québécois, NDP, and Liberals, including in my home, the Northwest Territories. These investments mean good jobs, including in Ontario, stronger communities, and keeps Canada a leader in technology, defence, and healthcare. The Mining Association of Canada has applauded the budget, and I hope members opposite will too.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar this Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more they spend, the more things cost. Nearly $80 billion in deficit spending. That means $450 a month coming right out of Canadians' pockets. This will make it even harder for Canadians to buy groceries and pay their bills. Instead, we get a bloated bureaucracy and high-priced consultants. Why does this Prime Minister believe he can spend hardworking Canadians' money better than they can?
Honourable Minister for Northern and Arctic Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we're focused on securing our sovereignty in the North and the Arctic with a $1 billion infrastructure fund for airports, seaports, all-season roads in North and in Northern Manitoba. We're focused on a $2.3 billion clean water for Indigenous communities. They're voting against an Inuit Nunangat University to build skills and hopes for Northern youth. We are focused on building, protecting, and empowering Canadians. They need to get on board.
L'honorable député Honoré Mercier.
Mr. Speaker, residents in my riding have expressed concern about the cost of living. Budget 2025 is full of great initiatives that will empower them and Canadians across the country.
Clearly, there are many in this House who would like to hear the member from the top.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues are very excited to hear me today. Budget 2025 is full of great initiatives that will empower them and Canadians across the country to get ahead financially. Increasing competition is one way to achieve affordability. And in Budget 2025, there are several pro-affordability measures related to making the financial sector more competitive. Can the Secretary of State for the CRA and financial institutions inform this House about how the government is making life more affordable for Canadians by reforming the financial sector?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for that important question. In our generational budget, Canada's new government is making life more affordable for Canadians by making our financial system more competitive and innovative. Among other things, we are providing Canadians with more financial options by helping credit unions and smaller banks grow and compete, advancing open banking, which will make it easier for Canadians to find lower fee checking accounts, cheaper loans, and higher interest savings. On this side of the House, we're laser focused on making life more affordable for Canadians. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
The Prime Minister told Canadians that they need to sacrifice more to pay for the Liberals' inflationary deficit. But the Liberals sure aren't sacrificing much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, an Ottawa gossip rig feted the Liberals for attending a lavish deficit cocktail party hosted by rich Ottawa insiders, lobbyists, and media firms who were thrilled with the billions of tax dollars for their wealthy clients and owners. Will the Liberals apologize for popping champagne corks with rich lobbyists to celebrate a massive inflationary deficit while Canadians can't even afford a case of beer?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Speaker. And I want to point out that rural Canada wants the investment that this budget affords all Canada needs, and we're going to stand in support of rural Canada, Mr. Speaker. And in Saskatchewan, I'm going to tell our MPs, the Conservative MPs, Saskatchewan is watching, and all we're asking you guys to do was what you've been doing for the last 10 years on the budget vote. Sit this one out so that Saskatchewan can finally get help from the province to reach its full potential. Come on board!
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
There was much hype about this budget. Much has already been made public in the pre-budget announcements. My question is what is not in the budget. The impact of the 15% cut across most departments, including the loss of 40,000 workers, is buried in buzzwords like streamlining, modernizing, and recalibrating. Will the Prime Minister tell Canadians what programs are being cut, which ones will end when the funding sunsets, and how people in our communities will be impacted? Canadians deserve to know.
Hear, hear.
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the very important question that she asked. I think she will have seen in the budget that we remain true to our values, Mr. Speaker, Canadian values. We made sure that while we do a budget which is focused on the future and investment, that we protect people, that we protect child care, that we protect pharmacare, that we protect dental care. You know what, Mr. Speaker, because we understand on this side of the House that affordability and supporting Canadians at a time like this is essential, but at the same time we're going to build a great future, Mr. Speaker. We're going to take care of Canadians today because we believe in Canada.
Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
It's increasingly clear that this government's budget fails to deliver the transformational change promised and fails to meet the moment. It fails to provide any relief right now for the millions of Canadians suffering through an affordability crisis. 60% are having trouble meeting their monthly expenses. Half are using credit cards or borrowing money for daily needs, paying interest rates of 19% or more. Why did the Liberals fail to provide concrete measures to help the millions of Canadians who need help now?
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad for the question from my colleague. It's a very important question, and you will remember that the first thing we did for Canadians was to cut tax for 22 million Canadians because we understand that affordability is at the heart of the concerns of Canadians. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you would have seen in the budget an initiative that I know he supports because we talked about that, Mr. Speaker, when we made automatic benefits to Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's the way we want to do. We want to cut red tape, support Canadians, and build a great country together.
Alors, ça met fin à la période des questions. Et on sait que on anticipe une question importante dans quelques secondes, mais on va donner la chance aux collègues de quitter tranquillement et silencieusement la Chambre avant de poursuivre et de procéder à la question du jeudi. I wish to inform the House that the volume of earpieces will now be reset.